In this lesson on researching on subjects for long-term projects, it is very important to remember that when we do research, we must establish contact and connect with different sources. And we must check, cross-check, verify, re-verify the information that we get in the research process. Now let's hear Mr. Selvaprakash Lakshmanan tell us about another long-term project that he worked on for over 4 years, the Temple Elephant Rejuvenation Camp. As he worked on this project over several years, he realized that he could tell stories not only through photographs but also through multimedia elements using audio and video.
This is another long-term project, 4 years I worked, which is Temple Elephant Rejuvenation Camp. When I was in a newspaper, I read the news saying the government of Tamil Nadu decided to move all the elephant to the camp, which is on a foothills, and then the elephant stays in a 48 days, and that will get a special treatment, and of course the elephant will be taken into a river, and then special food and medicine and veterinary doctor inspecting it, and some of the elephant is overweight, so the veterinary doctor will ask the mahouts to take them for a walking and things like that. So when I read that, it was very interesting, but that time I was with the newspaper. I had very little time to work on long-term project because you have to take a break from your work. As you know that newspaper industry gives only 1 day leave in a week. It's a weekly off, so it's hard to find a free time to work on a long-term project. When I was in a magazine, the magazine which I worked is a fortnight, which is 15 days once they publish a magazine. So I find I have more free time to work on the other projects. So I thought of this is the right time to do the Temple Elephant Rejuvenation Camp. So first time I went to the camp and I shot some of the portraits with the magouts and the elephant and very little bit of an activities, and then I came back, and hope you remember that I have told you you should show your work to some of the people who works in long-term project, either the photographer or even some of the photo editor. Like that, like showed this temple regeneration project. I went to a photo festival called Visapur, which happens in France. So I went and showed this work to one of the photo editor, and they saw the images and they asked, they really liked the images, and of course they gave a feedback saying they were really interested to know the process of the how they move the elephant from one temple to other, one temple to the camp, and then returning back, and the whole journey of the elephant, because these elephants, some of the elephants travels 400-500 kilometers on a truck, so which is visually interesting. And so they said, why don't you look at those aspects rather than just portraits of magouts and the elephant. So that was a very interesting feedback from the photo editor. And then the very next year I plan to travel along with the elephant. So as I already told, since I have a very good networking with a local journalist, I ring some local journalist and find some sort of a access to travel along the one of the elephant. Then finally I got that access. So I traveled along with the elephant. I was sitting in the front of the lorry. Even before they are taking into the lorry, 2 or 3 days before, they will train the elephant how to board the elephant into the lorry and then bring it down, because elephants are not temple elephants are not familiar with that. Sometimes they get panic, so they give a training session for that. So I shot those training images. I really got nice images. One of the training session where the elephant is stepping out from one of the school auditorium. That's where they park the lorry and they board the elephant. So I got really unusual images, and I traveled whole night. I traveled with the elephant. I shot in between when they stop, and even while driving also I shot some of the images and managed to get some decent shots. And then you reach the camp base, and then I shot them. So the formal inauguration of the camp, which usually happen, the politicians or the minister of the specific ministry, people who comes and do a formal inauguration of the camp. So usually the formal inauguration starts at 8 o'clock or 10 in the morning. So all the newspaper photographer comes around 9:30 or 10 o'clock. But I decided to go around 5:30 in the morning to see how they are preparing and make these elephants ready for the inauguration day. So they wake up very early on the first day, like say 5 o'clock or something, and they start bathing their elephants, and they temporarily set up a kind of a shower that time, because they said like let's put a kind of a shower setup to give bath for the elephants. So since I was in the early morning, and I really got some really unusual pictures because of the light and because of the activity happening on the very first day is really unusual than the other days. So I got some unusual images from the first day of the camp, and then the formal inauguration, and then interacting with the magoots, and then stay back, and I just visit the kitchen where they cook special food for the elephants, and I shoot those food and then close up of those ingredients. So that will give you a sense for an audience of what is the kind of a food they are giving in a camp, and in the evening they take the elephant for walking. So different images you will get it, and but if you are a news photographer, you come and take some formal inauguration and then couple of images and you leave. But if when you working on a project, you need a different image to tell the story. So I stay back for 2-3 days, and every day morning I visit, and then evening I go, afternoon I just go and talk to the magoots. Like I'm talking to the magoots, and one of the magoots have a big tattoo on his hand, which is his own elephant's face. So I took a portrait of him and with the elephant. So these things happen when you interact with them, and if you spend more time in the field, so you will know this little interesting story. Even I found there is a Muslim magoot who works in a Hindu temple, something unusual and very interesting news, you will get it. And I also shot his portrait with his elephant. So this is another long term project I did, and that is also, there is a higher chance when you are working on a long term project, you can publish those stories nationally and internationally. And that is one thing, is like you can tell the story to the larger audience and reach the larger people. Other thing is, of course, you will get paid for such stories, and internationally there is a good payment for these kind of an interesting story, and at the same time you are telling the story to a larger audience. That's an ultimate aim. In the very beginning I have told everyone have a story to tell, and everyone use the different medium to tell those stories, and we are photographers and we use cameras to tell those stories. So if you have a stories, and then if you are interested in photography, definitely you can tell those stories through your camera. And when you say tell the stories through the camera, then you will ask, I have some stories but I don't know how to tell a story, and then you have to do a bit of a mind mapping exercise. In the mind mapping exercise, you have to write down what is your story. Is this story is possible to tell through only photographs? Then is there, yes, then it is possible. But some stories need a little bit of audio interviews and a little bit of videos. In my case, even like that elephant camp, I have shot a little bit of a videos, and then later I made it as a multimedia piece. Multimedia piece means you will use multiple medium like audio and photo, video, some infographics, things like that you will use to tell those stories. So you can also think about your story and then you do a mind mapping and then decide what is the medium you are going to choose, photography or a multimedia, photo and a video, or some interviews and photos. There are different ways of doing it, and there are experimental way to do some stories also. So it's time to think about long term stories and start working on it. When you do long term project, I am sure you have some questions like how to establish contacts, because I said I worked in a different states, and how do you get how to get access in a different places. Since I have told you I worked in newspaper and magazines, I have a really good journalist network nationally and internationally. So when I have idea to shoot in a different cities or a different states, so I will try to get in touch with some of the journalists who works in that area through my networks, and then I talk to them, and the kind of a story I am interested in doing it in that specific region, I explain them. Then they will try to connect with two other few sources, and I also do extensive research in published article in newspaper and online magazines, and people who works in that area, experts and things like that I do. By doing that, you will get more information about the specific issue, and also you will get a different perspective about those issues. Say I have told you this Karnakapalli, and there is a general news which is because of the background radiation there is a higher cancer rate, but when you refer some of the scientific reports, no scientific report is backing up that statement. There is no correlation between the background radiation and the number of cancer incidents in that region. So this will give you a kind of a understanding. Of course, documenting that will sensitize the issue to do more research to find out why there is a more cancer issues in that region, but at the same time you have a kind of an understanding, not just because of the background radiation the cancer incidents are high. So it is important that you should do a lot of research and trying to get informations from different sources, not one sources. That you have to be very careful with that, because everyone have their own perspective, and you collect different data and different informations, and then you put together and then analyze it, and then you can comes to a conclusion, and then you start documenting the issue. That's why I said even for the sea erosion, it is not only because of the climate change, because of the unscientific construction along the coastline is also triggering a huge sea erosion on the Indian coastline. Long term project, how to archive images. Since I have told you this is a long term project, people work for a longer time, say like 5 years, 10 years, 15 years. So you should have a proper archiving images, because that is very, very important, and there are different style of workflows. I personally shoot personal project in raw files and a small JPEG, and once I come back from these shoots I will take 2-3 days of break, because you have a strong visual memory. Visual memory means when you shoot you know what are the images you got it. If you edit immediately you will choose exactly whatever the image you liked on the day of shooting. So I leave it for 2-3 days, and then I start opening those files and looking at that with a fresh mind, so that I might pick up some other few good images. Those images I will move into the same folder called first edit, and those first edit I will upload it into some of the image editing software, and then I color correct it, and that's the edit from the specific shoot. So like that, so far I have done some more than 50-60 trips. So I have a different trips, I have these first edit. So if I wanted to edit for an exhibition, if I wanted to publish it for a magazine, and then in case in future I plan to do a book on that, so I probably take images from the first edit, and I organized everything in a properly organized in a hard disk, and maybe you guys can do a proper keywords and rename the file with the proper names and things like that, so that you can easily find and search the specific images if there is a request from a publication or an exhibition or a media house. So you have to be well organized in terms of archiving your long-term projects.
So today we have talked about long-term projects. Long-term projects are not what usually a photojournalist does, because she or he would be covering stories which are to be carried on a daily or a weekly basis. However, if you pick up a long-term project, it can be creatively satisfying and give you an opportunity to develop a lot of skills. When you do a long-term project, you develop a lot of skills such as your photography skills, how to improve on telling stories through images. You improve on your skills of organizing your images. How do you have a workflow that helps you to access your images at a later point of time? How do you index your image and archive it for easy access, which we have already spoken about in an earlier lesson on writing photo captions. And we've talked about the importance of giving certain keywords that can help us to find the images that we have taken earlier on in time. A long-term project will generate a lot of images over many years, and if you want to get them together for a book or an exhibition or for any other purpose, you need to be able to find the images. So remember archiving images, giving keywords, indexing your images, and having a workflow in which your work is organized will really help you go the long way. We hope that this lesson encourages and inspires you to find your own ideas and subjects to take up long-term projects. We wish you all the best.